let you down. Things are moving fast. Hold on tight and you will last. Keep your self-respect, your manly pride. Get yourself in gear, keep your stride. Never mind your fears. Brighter days will soon be here. Take it from me, someday we'll all be free. Yeah. Keep on walking tall. Hold your head up high. Lay your dreams right up to the sky. Sing your greatest song, and you'll keep growing, growing on. Take it from me, someday we'll all be free. Hey, just wait and see, someday we'll all be free. Yeah. Take it from me, someday we'll all be free. It won't be long. Take it from me, someday we'll all be free.
Good afternoon. My name is Vanetta Lightfoot, and I am the Multicultural Affairs Operations Manager here at STCC. On behalf of the Office of Multicultural Affairs, I would like to thank you and welcome you here today. And thank you for participating in the second season of the Heart of a Man series entitled Hearts and Minds, a Dialogue on Education. I would like to take this time to thank all of you for helping to create such a powerful space for men to share their stories and create avenues for change. I am so proud to say that we've reached over 3,000 views since the series began in October. And now we are back with more sessions and wonderful new speakers. I also want to give a huge thank you to my team, Cindy, James, and hashtag Sick We Can, for helping me to realize my vision for this series and for making this happen, even as our kids run around in the background. And some of us, like me, are broadcasting from our kitchens and kids' rooms. It is a pleasure to work with you, and thank you for your support. Lastly, I want to thank my panelists, Miguel, Eli, Chief, Sean, and Steve. You are all amazing, and I appreciate you so much for agreeing to do this without hesitation. You don't know how much that means to me, so thank you so much. In order to keep doing this work, we need to continue our support from you all. One of the ways you can help us is by filling out our event survey at the conclusion of this session. We want to hear from you about how we're doing and what new sessions or speakers we can bring for you. The survey will also give you ways to get involved with the series and the shared work of preventing sexual and relationship violence. I'm very excited to share with you that through a generous STCC Foundation Innovation Grant, we have created the STCC Heart to Heart Focus Group, which is an initiative seeking to strategically engage male students of color in holistic support for retention, while also developing a shared commitment to ending gender-based violence. We are actively recruiting 10 male students of color to participate in the Heart to Heart Focus Group this spring. Please look out for more information on this initiative, and if you know a student who would benefit from being a part of the focus group, please feel free to contact me at vmlightfoot@stcc.edu. One of the goals of Heart of a Man is to promote and support the Male Initiative for Leadership in Education, known as MILE. The MILE program is designed to provide inclusive academic support, mentoring, and community engagement opportunities to male students at STCC. MILE is always looking for students to participate in the program. For more information, please visit the MILE page on our website, and the link will be in the chat. Now I would like to introduce my co-creator, my colleague, my friend, Cindy Brunig, to share more about #StickWeCan and to introduce our moderator.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cindy Brunig, and I am Project Director for the Office of Violence Against Women Campus Program Grant. And this grant seeks to strengthen both prevention and response to dating violence, domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking through campus and community partnerships. #StickWeCan is an initiative of this grant and seeks to truly create an engaged campus community where each and every one of us can do our part to prevent sexual and relationship violence. We believe that men play a critical role as leaders in this work to end these forms of violence, as both allies and survivors themselves. In order for men to show up and engage in this work of turning the tide on sexual and relationship violence, we believe it is critical to create spaces for men to find holistic support, be able to show vulnerability and experience healing. So with Heart of the Man, we seek to model how together we can truly be the change we want to see in the world. I am so proud to be a part of this series, and we hope that this is just the beginning of a very long-term conversation on campus. It is now my honor to introduce to you our moderator for today, James Lightfoot III. James is currently the Director of Education and Youth Programs for the Urban League of Springfield. James is an advocate, a consultant, and a mentor for youth and young adult males and programs. We now hand it off to you, James.
Here we go. Good afternoon, and thank you, Cindy, for that introduction. I'd like to also welcome our panelists and our participants who've joined us today. Today's session is entitled Hearts and Minds, a dialogue on education. Our session will feature a panel of men from diverse backgrounds. It will feature a panel of men from diverse backgrounds, professions, and experiences who will share their stories and engage in dialogue with the participants. As we frame this conversation today on education and the roles it plays in the lives and development of men, especially men of color, I would like us to look at it from not only the traditional lens of education. Education, as we all speak of it today, will be described potentially in many forms. Traditional classroom education, education from our peer groups, education gained from other social interactions, education attained on a sports team or other non-academic interactions. Today, we have 5 educators who may work in or practice in traditional education settings are all different in the way that they engage in the education process. And they pass the many lessons they've learned on to those young people who are part of their lives. I'm sure the experiences that will be shared today will inspire those who think of themselves as educators to go deeper, and those who are unsure if they're educators to look within and find the tools needed to inspire the next generation. I'll now introduce our panel. We have Michael Peterson, father, poet, spoken word artist. He's the Dean of Students at New Britain High School in New Britain, Connecticut. We have Elijah Oliver Sr., the founder and CEO of Take Flight Enterprises. We have Miguel Velez. He's the Adult Basic Education and Early Language Learner Intake Specialist for the Springfield Adult Learning Center. We have Stephen A. Arrington, Assistant Principal at Dozier Middle School in Newport News, Virginia. He's also a musician and an arts advocate. And lastly, we have Sean Whitley, PhD. He's an educator, author, professional development expert, and CEO of Teach, Hustle, Inspire. I'm very excited to welcome all of our panelists here today. And I know we are in for very rich and meaningful dialogue. Now, before we begin, I'd like to go over the format for today's session. As you can see, we've already begun in webinar format, which means your video and audio are disabled while our panelists are speaking. After we hear from our panelists, we will transition into a Q&A portion of the session, and you can use the chat feature or the Q&A box to ask your questions. Please be encouraged to put questions and comments in the chat or the Q&A box while the session is going on, and our team will monitor it. Following the session, all registered attendees will receive a survey. We ask that you complete that survey. Your responses will be helpful for the planning team to evaluate the series and make any needed adjustments. We thank you in advance for your feedback. Now, without any further ado, let's hear from our panelists. I will begin today with Michael Chief Peterson. Excellent. All right, Chief. Give us 1 second for audio. All right,
Bingo.
Perfect. We got it.
All right.
Excellent. Welcome, brother. Welcome. So we're going to start off with you. And the question is, how has education shaped the person that you are today and the work that you're doing in your community?
Okay. So I didn't bother looking at the question beforehand because I wanted to give a genuine and natural response. Candidly speaking, and I know this is an educational forum and I probably shouldn't say this, but from a student perspective, I wasn't a real advocate of school. I didn't really like it, but I've been a dean of students now this is my 18th year. I got the job right out of high school. So from a dean perspective, I absolutely love what I do. And I wished that there was a me for me when I was in school, if that makes sense. You know, someone who was, the irony is I've been the dean of students at my alma mater, New Britain High School. I went to high school there, so to come back and work there is like a blessing for me. But education has always been, as crazy as it was, as much as I didn't per se like it, I knew it was important. And I used challenges, the challenge of getting an A or the challenge of getting good grades as my motivation versus actually being engulfed in the educational process, if that makes sense. So it was more so, okay, you have an assignment to do, you need to be great at it. So you got to get this good grade. And I wasn't necessarily fueled by the education. It was more so the outcome, the result of it all that fueled me to keep going. But daily, I'm doing something in the community to give back. I mean, literally every day there's something going on that I'm giving back to the kids. I'm lending a helping hand. For example, last night I tried my hand at being a commentator for our varsity basketball game. First, so we can't go to the gym, so we live stream it. And myself and a friend of mine, Randy Brocher, who is absolutely phenomenal at commentary, it's what he does for a living. He does it on the college level. So he came back and he volunteered his time at the high school, asked if I wanted to join. I'm like, sure, I'll do it. Never done it before. It's actually not as easy as one would think it is. But it's just, it took some time one night to give back to the kids and, to support the high school and watch a game and then be on live stream, giving back to the kids. It felt good to me. So I've been watching, listening to basketball games now just to kind of get a feel for what the color commentary looks like so I can shine next time. But every day there's something going on that kind of fuels me to want to give back to the kids. I make it a point to represent where I'm from as where they're from, so they can see that we're kind of one and the same. Kids look at me with the crazy eye when you walk into the grocery store, like, yeah, I got to eat too, buddy. Like, Mister, you're here. So I try to really be an example of you can still be successful given these circumstances, and of course, it takes education to get there. However you choose to motivate yourself, education has to be part of the process.
Yeah. And I hope I don't cut into like future answers, but was there a person or certain moment where you're like, yeah, I need to take this a little more serious, or I really need to take advantage of this, education, whether it be formally or informally?
I don't know if there was necessarily a person, but just growing up in the inner city, the adversity you see. Somewhere I think honestly it happened at a very young age. I saw some violence happen, and it was like, I don't ever want to be in that situation. So it was like in my head, it was like, you have to get a scholarship or you won't. Mom didn't have $100,000 to send me to college, so like, you got to get a scholarship so you can get out of here and you can do or be something. Do something, be somebody. So I put all of my energy into football, and it ended up working out to get to school for free and was able to do what I had to do and get that education. So Mom is proud on that behalf, no student loans or nothing like that. So that's a win for us, for the family right there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. So we'll be back to you shortly with some more questions or some more conversations. So thank you very much, Chief.
No problem.
I'll now hear from my good brother, Elijah Oliver. Welcome.
Good afternoon. How we doing?
How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Thank you for being here today. So same question as I asked Chief, how has education shaped the person that you are today in the work that you're doing in your community?
Absolutely. So there was some similarities. I almost ran around this room when Mr. Chief was talking, because, a lot of similarities. I was that student, that young person that didn't care about education. In high school, I was a C- student, did just enough to get by. I was literally class clown, like not just, oh, haha, Elijah got jokes, but I'm in my yearbook class clown because I didn't care anything about it. It was just all about having fun and playing sports, basketball for me, until I almost didn't graduate. I remember my history teacher coming to me and saying, you may not graduate, right? And he literally showed me a folder of all of my missed assignments, of all of my absences, and literally said, what do you want to do? And so in my transition from high school to college, the same mentality, the same behaviors. In college, spent 3 semesters on academic probation. I started my college career with a 2.03, graduated in 5 years with a 2.17. I fell so far behind, right? And I didn't understand the value of an education until I graduated from college. That's when it really hit me. And, my grandfather growing up, he said, son, when you go to school, study computers, that's going to be the way of the world. How he knew that, I have no clue, right? But he knew that. And so that's what I studied up until, I changed my major. But again, it didn't hit me until I graduated, because I started applying for graduate school. And I'm like, wait a minute, maybe I should have paid attention, just a little bit more attention, in high school and college. And so, with my experience, with my journey, education, not just from a degree standpoint, but being a student of life, right? And learning as much as I can wherever I'm at, really has shaped me into who I am today. And it's ingrained in the work that I do. And when I finally got to graduate school, in applying myself, right? And graduating with a 3.96, not for show, not for, anything else, but it was personal, because I wanted to prove the Elijah in high school and the Elijah in college. I wanted to prove that person wrong, because I knew I could do it. I just didn't apply myself, right? And so I grew up thinking that I was a less average student. That was my mindset for a very, very long time, because of what that transcript said in high school and college. And so given my personal journey, really has shaped, in empowering and pouring into young people, the business, that I have, and even in ministry. I serve as youth pastor at my church in Bloomfield, Connecticut. And again, my personal experience is what I've learned and gained over the years. There wasn't anyone, telling me along the way, this is why you need to go to school. This is these are the benefits. We have a special guest that is my 15-month-old son. So,
Hey.
but there was nobody there. My father, I was first generation college student, first in my family to receive a master's degree. And in my household, it was really the typical or traditional: go to school, get an education, get a job, and do well for yourself. But no one sat there and taught me the importance of why and what an education can do for you. Again, not just traditionally from a degree, which is obviously helpful. It opens doors and things of that nature. But just being educated and establishing a life for yourself based on the different areas that you learn from, the different roles and jobs that you have. So, for me personally, it had a lot to do with my personal experience, my personal journey, and how it's shaped, corporately, a lot of stuff that I do, have done professionally. So, from a personal standpoint, that's how, my education has shaped me.
All right. Excellent. Thank you, brother. So that, it's very important that you use those life lessons and experiences to keep pushing you forward. And it seems like you're continuing to take flight and elevate. Absolutely. That was a terrible pun. I know.
No, you right on point. Absolutely.
We'll hear more about that, but thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right. Excellent. So thank you, Eli, for that. We'll hear from Miguel Velez next. Welcome, Miguel. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. And
all right.
I appreciate this.
Excellent. We appreciate you. And so you've heard the question twice. If you don't need me to ask it again, please share.
All right. So education has shaped me and my life completely. I was a kid who didn't care about school or education or anything really. And I found myself, just like many teenagers, homeless and in jail, so that was my life until it was time, I would hear messages about education, and there were so many barriers in place that I couldn't even get to school with financial aid and whatnot. Being incarcerated, you weren't able to go to school. So after a long while, I was able to apply and go back to school. I got my GED. I went back to school. It's something that shaped me and what I do every day. I work at an STCC, Springfield Adult Learning Center office, where I help other students get their GED, get in classes to get their GED. I coach boys basketball, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. I do all the high school grades because I feel that's where a lot of things are missing for men of color. It's a good place for me to start, for me to give back, because I've been so blessed. I ended up graduating from STCC with my associates and going to Westfield State. And that's something as a kid was never, it was never something that would have been done. My family was always, you're gonna grow up and you're gonna get a job working with your hands, working on a farm. And that's what my family did. So to be able to work in education, give back, it's been so meaningful in my life.
Excellent. So you've used also some of that, personal experiences to continue pushing you forward. And now, you're seeing young people, young adults in the same positions that you were, and you're guiding them towards the, same
Exactly.
direction, seeking education.
Exactly. I try,
honorable.
because sometimes a lot of these men grew up without a father like me, so I can understand, I can sympathize, but yet still be with some force.
Yeah.
Education it has opened the doors for me, and will keep opening doors.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's excellent. We're on the roll and we're getting some good responses here. So next we'll hear from Stephen Arrington.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
It seems like we're in a barbershop right now. I'm getting to talk to some really good brothers. So I appreciate this. I'm soaking it all in, and hopefully
we go way back.
Our audience is also. Absolutely. So same question to you, Stephen. How has education shaped the person that you are today and the work that you're doing in your community? And what community is that also?
Well, I live or reside in the Hampton Roads area of Virginia. For anyone who's ever traveled to the state of Virginia, I'm near Virginia Beach. That's like one of the major cities. I work in Newport News, but I actually live in Suffolk, Virginia. So I'm in that Hampton Road 757 area for anybody who ever travels here. For me, and I kind of broke this down in some bullet points and I'll elaborate, education has opened so many doors of opportunity for me. I've had the opportunity to network and make some connections that I probably never would have had, had I not either been involved in education or pursued education as a professional. Education has truly, helped me to learn more about my individual community, whether it be just as a private citizen or just understanding the folks that I engage with and the people that I teach. And that allowed me the platform to better serve that community. But most importantly, for me, education was just a way to give back. To me, my community, allowed me to share my gifts and stay connected to people using the talents and abilities that I had. And those were fostered by the folks that invested time and energy into me throughout my life. So, with education, I'm telling you, it's been, of course, life-changing, altering. People on this panel that I can call brother. I can go to probably any major city in the United States and make a phone call, and I've actually, pulled that car once or twice, and I can connect with people that are either in my college circle of friends, personal circle of friends, and that's, again, through education. What I would say is, as a musician and a performer, where, I was allowed the opportunity to pursue that role or that career path and refine that skill in education, which is, in my opinion, my finest moments, because, it gave me the opportunity, one, to really focus on that craft. You know, I, like many of the panelists have stated, I was a very average student. To me, I was not motivated at all, you know, to kind of connect. Reading, writing, and arithmetic, I was definitely an average to above average student. Being honor roll, just, it really didn't matter to me. But when I got into the band classroom or in athletics, because of the competitive nature of just who I am, you know, it was huge. Like, that's when the light bulb went off. You know, anything that I could, you know, showcase my skills or abilities, I was on it. So just a quick synopsis. I actually didn't want to go to college right out of high school. I actually was going to go the military route. I auditioned for the Marine Corps band and everything. And true story, a lot of people don't know, I actually served as a military reservist my senior year of high school. So I was actually drilling 1 week in a month, boots and utes, learning how to take apart M16s, the whole nine, as a 17-year-old. However, I was very blessed and fortunate to play at Jazz Week at Hampton University, which is my undergraduate place of school. And I had an opportunity to meet Barney Smart, the director of bands at the time, and he offered me an opportunity to play. So he said, "You want to go to school? You want to learn?" And I said, "I'll give it a shot." So I actually canceled all my plans. I opted out of my contract with the military and decided to pursue education. And it's probably the best decision I ever made, because I was finally in a place where I could be around like-minded individuals, refine my craft, and learn and grow, you know, in a field that I knew that I wanted to be a part of. I always wanted to teach music, be a part of music, share, you know, my gifts with students. And that's what then catapulted me fast forward into leadership, because at the top of the food chain, where you're making decisions and you get the opportunity to kind of, you know, be a part of curriculum development, it was huge for me to pursue educational administration, because I wanted to be that advocate for those students like myself who were serious about the arts, but didn't have, you know, kind of the vehicle to kind of navigate, you know, that space, and just showing the importance of music appreciation, making sure that arts programs in every school that I've ever participated and been a part of were at their top of their game.
Mm-hmm. So what I hear you talking about here is your passion and finding that thing and really taking it to the next level.
Not only finding that thing that you love and that you're passionate about, but inspiring others to have that same love and appreciation and understanding. Many of the students I taught never became great musicians. Some did, but never became great musicians. But the one thing all my students could take away from was they learned a little bit more. They had a little bit more appreciation and understanding about the fine and performing arts. And they can always have that conversation that, you know, I got that from that class that I took.
Right.
At that time.
Excellent. Hey, brother, well, keep doing what you're doing. We'll hear some more from you shortly.
Thank you.
All right. Moving right along here. We're getting some good feedback and some good history from our panelists about their journey in education and what motivated them and shaped them. So next we'll hear rounding out this portion of our dialogue with Dr. Sean Woodley.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, good brother. How are you?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. And I'll start off before we get into your question. That teach, hustle, inspire.
Yes.
I can't think of 3 better words to put before people like students, other educators. I would have worn it today, but I'm repping something else. But I've worn that your statement in a board meeting before, and you know, it's drawn some questions. You know,
awesome. That's the purpose.
I'm not sure if it increased sales, but you know, they definitely were. You know, curious about, you know, the statement, and you know, I think that really, you know, puts people in a different mindset.
Yes.
You know, when they see those three words together. But enough about that right now. How has education shaped the person that you are today, and the work that you're doing in your community?
Sure, sure. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to join this panel of esteemed guests. I consider it a privilege and an honor to be here and participate. I want to kind of circle back to some of what has already been discussed. And if you notice, there's a recurring theme. For a lot of us as men of color, we oftentimes, more often than not, do not have good experiences with education. If we do, it's not on a consistent basis. Because if you were to really dig and peel back the layers to asking what was your pre-K, kindergarten through 12th grade experience like, maybe we can point to this teacher or that teacher. But for most of us on a consistent basis, it was something that we often, because we were successful, we didn't succeed because of, we succeeded in spite of. There's a lot of, because of the curriculum and what it's rooted in, there's not a lot of opportunity for us to connect with what we are being taught. That, coupled with the fact that, you know, I had the privilege of experience in education from both sides, from being a student in the system and then turning around and teaching in that system. And then technically a third side, because now I teach teachers who teach in this system. So now what you're talking about is really being immersed from several perspectives on what we are teaching and how, you know, really there's a vast difference between schooling and education. When you talk about the schooling side of it, that is curriculum where you can literally take a textbook and on any page, guaranteed 9.5 times out of 10, it'll land on some form of information about either one, a white man, or two, not including the story or perspective of people of color. Perfect example, we are smack in the middle of Black History Month. I'm willing to bet you $1 to a donut right now that every single one of us can relate to Black History Month experiences that we were taught, if we were taught them, but that were rooted in struggle, slavery, Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King, and ending in that kind of slavery to civil rights, all founded in struggle. Important, but where is the fulfillment of who we were before we were stolen? Where is the idea that we are more than struggle? That's just kind of a high level of indoctrination that we're fed literally for 13 years straight. And we wonder why so many of us just have a difficult time with school. And again, not succeed because of, succeed in spite of. I was very, very fortunate to have parents that stayed on me and made sure that I succeeded no matter what, or these hands was coming, but that's a different story. That's a different story about Lightfoot. So, you know, kind of similar to what was mentioned already, I was saved by music. And going into 11th, 12th grade, like I was that student, I was in the band and I was in all things creative. So art, anything that let me express my creativity, I was taking part of it. And so what happened was 11th grade, 12th grade, when it was time to make those decisions about what are you going to do in the future, I swore up and down, I played drums. I'm going on tour with Usher. What are you talking about? And I got some good advice from my music theory teacher, best advice probably that I got at that age. And he said, you know what, you're a great musician. He said, just give yourself a little bit something to fall back on, just in case, you know, Bad Boy Records doesn't call you. You never know. So I set myself up. That was some great advice. So I studied education as well as music. And when I got to the illustrious Hampton University, I began to see that my skill set in playing drums, it wasn't what I thought it was compared to everyone else. I met some really, really strong musicians who forced me to elevate my game. I know some people, as a matter of fact, one of my good friends right now, literally, that I met at Hampton, he's on tour with Charlie Wilson, like that level of musicianship. I wasn't there. So I had to figure out something else quick. And thankfully, I had education to fall back on. And when I got into my education courses, I really was instantly drawn to the social science side of it, to the psychology of it, to the connection of being able to just understand the human mind and how it operates. And it was fascinating to me. My observations, my student teaching experience, it was all really very eye-opening and something that I genuinely enjoyed and connected with. So that made me more excited to now see what impact that I can have to prevent other students from experiencing what I did to try and have some sort of impact to increase or to decrease that succession in spite of and increase that succession because of. What I got to realize though is as I was teaching, I taught middle school for 8 years, and then I went back to teach kindergarten through 5th grade for some years. Yeah, I was in the trenches. I was. And what I started to realize is that I wanted to have a bit more of an impact. And I'll never forget in August of 2009, I saw kind of like, with the welcome back opening convocation sessions that we have for the beginning of the school year. And I saw the opening speaker. We were all in the Norfolk Soap. There was thousands of us in there. And this person, I've come to find out later that he was a professor at Hampton. While I was there, I just never had him. And he gave an opening speech that lit a fire under me like never before. And that was the spark for me that lit me to entrepreneurship and trying to really take what I've learned to help my students and exponentially increase my impact. So now here is the beginnings, if you will, of Teach, Hustle, Inspire and my book, and being able to connect with other educators so that they can connect with their students and again, decrease that succeeding in spite of and increase that succeeding because of.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for sharing that, brother. Wow. So I like how you brought everything together there. And that really helps, transition us to, having a full dialogue, with all the brothers. And thanks for speaking all that truth. That was, we needed that this afternoon. I was about to say this morning. Problem. I don't know what time it is here. But I would like to welcome all our panelists as we transition into the next segment of our series here. All right, and thank you all again for joining us. I'll wait till all of us pop up. Good brother Chief and Elijah. All right. Make sure we didn't lose everyone. All right, excellent. Thank you all. And it looks like from some of the comments from our audience, they're riding with us right now. So, let's continue them on this trip here with us. So thank you all for sharing the personal stories. Some that are difficult to share, but some you all are happy to share in hopes that it inspires someone out there who's listening. So as we transition to this next session, it's really like, it's going to be popcorn, right? So I'm not calling names or asking you to raise your hand, but as you feel ready to respond, please do so. Right. So the next question is, how do stereotypes and biases based on race, class, and gender impact boys and men of color across educational experiences from early childhood to higher education?
I'll jump in.
Anyone want to tackle that one? Go for it.
I think it's easy for people to categorize us, label us, or completely dismiss us. Negative stereotypes allow, especially the non-minority groups, to marginalize the contributions, to our educational space and within society. It can be something as simple as the language we speak with our peers, how we carry ourselves in public, and even the company that we keep. To others, that can define us, in their eyes. So, I say all that to say this, stereotypes, labels, bias, until we can all kind of sit down at the table and really learn from one another and see, how the other side lives. And that just comes through being well-traveled, being well-versed, and having an opportunity to connect with people that are not like you. Especially in education, there are always going to be these obstacles.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Looks like Miguel wanted to say something there.
What I wanted to say is that as being men of color, we are not supposed to, or we're always looked at as if the only way we're going to make it is if we get a scholarship, or we're not smart enough. Even now, today, it's as if we were never smart enough, or we can't become, or we don't belong. And we very much can sit at the table with anyone. I just, I try to tell young men that they can do anything, anything they choose, whether it's in education, whether it's in a medical field, whatever they want to do. They don't have to be a basketball player. They don't have to be a football player, even though that's what a lot of men of color want to be. They want to be a rapper. They look up to those type of people. We can be more than that. And that's all I want to say about the stereotypes and biases sometimes we have, or they have for us. I try to tell the kids that there's more out there than just basketball and football.
Yeah. So I don't want to sum it up because I know another brother is going to come behind you, but the limiting experience of exposure, essentially.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Anyone else? I know it was a long question. If you want me to repeat it, I can.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to need you to go ahead and repeat that.
All right, no worry. I'm looking at the faces. I'm reading the room here. All right. So the question was, how do stereotypes and biases based on race, class, and gender impact boys and men of color across educational experiences? So throughout, so like K or preschool through higher education. So how do those things, impact the experience?
I'll say this. One of the constants that we all, as human beings, we bring from the educator side, we bring into the classroom is our culture, right? So I was raised a specific way that is a part of who I am, that is my culture. A lot of times when we talk about culture, we think of it as food, dress, music that we listen to, things that are surface level. What we fail to realize is that culture is so much more below the surface. Moreover, that has a strong impact on our actions, how we perceive, not necessarily how things may be. More importantly, we make decisions off of those perceptions. What happens a lot of times is when you have educators that, especially for younger students, those K through 3 years, when you have educators who cannot effectively connect with their students through those, especially at those critical times for development, they are already behind the 8 ball. Kindergarten, there's lack of connection, so the student gets moved on, and there's a further lack of connection, the student gets moved on, further lack of connection, and so what's happening is this gap is widening itself. Those critical years of K through 3rd grade is really what's important to establish a foundation to learn to read, so that now going 4th grade forward, you can read to learn. If you don't have that critical foundation, now you're already at a deficit. You're steady trying to catch up for every single thing that you're trying to do. Now, couple that with how you're being perceived by the teachers. If you have a sizable number of students of color who are at this deficit because they did not have strong connections through those critical years, that is contributing to the perception that students of color can't learn. Look at the data, it'll tell you students of color, quote unquote, can't learn. But is it that those students can't learn, or is it that they were not connected with appropriately to establish the tools that they need to learn. So we really need to re-examine some of the root causes of these things and how it impacts how it impacts perception, and how that perception results in what is or what is not taught to those children.
Yes, indeed.
Huge.
Right. Yep. Brother Chief, Eli, you want to jump in this, or has it been said?
I think I would be just piggybacking off of what most of the gentlemen said, so I didn't want to go too deep into it. But I mean, we can go just based off of perception alone, just the visual perception. I mean, I'm sure if the 6 of us walked into a room dressed as we are, we don't get Dr. Woodley, we don't get CEO, we don't get AP of the building. You know, we don't get those titles. We get, who are these guys? And then we have to kind of affirm our positions by, you know, how we go about doing so. But nevertheless, I think just alone that visual perception of it. And I think, I don't know if any of you can attest this, but I don't think I saw my first male of color teacher until college. I had one physical education teacher in high school, but other than that, I think it's 2% of us are represented in the educational system, 2% of Black males. So we don't get to see ourselves off the rip from the gate. So then these kids now, again, back to Doctor, I love that Doctor was saying, we don't have the opportunity to, I mean, sometimes just that representation of us in the classroom is connection enough right there. The kids are now bought in because my teacher is a Black man. No shade to anyone else, all the teachers around. I mean, we salute you all, but again, there's not many of us in the educational system. I think that alone creates a perception of, like he was saying, Black men are, you know, we can't learn. We don't learn. We don't want to come back and teach. So the perception is often given just based off of a variety of different things, but oftentimes just because of how we are, how we look, right. That stereotype goes around.
Word. Eli, and I want to jump back to Chief in a minute. But
Eli, no, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, no, I was just going to say, Chief, I know I used to follow you on social media, and there's this one act of kindness that you perform daily that I think breaks into, you know, or ties into this idea of connection, right? So you used to meet your students back when the world was open at the bus, and I won't say force them, but almost force them to connect with you. So the first face they see before they enter the schoolhouse is someone welcoming them and preparing their minds to be in a space to learn and engage and know that there's someone there for them. And I remember go ahead.
As much as they, you know, they frowned upon it and they talked a lot of junk, them high fives was popping. So every morning I would get to school bright and early before the bus. I mean, I can't say bright because it was dark outside, but I would get to school before the buses came and just wait for the bus to open and try to high five as many kids as I could when we were allowed to do that. And it brought a dip, like, honestly, and I firmly believe this, and I'm not gonna let anybody take this from me. When it first started, we were at 90% attendance for the first 3 months of school. I mean, I know it's the beginning of the year, but we're at 90% of 3,600 kids in the building now, 90% attendance. And I think, you know, they just get that good vibe in the morning. And there was 20 of us out there after a while, 20 of us out there high-fiving buses, just welcoming the kids. And it was cool. We would play the music in the morning and really invite the kids and welcome them. And it was a good thing. And that was very welcoming. So yeah, I do agree that, you know, there's to see smiling faces every morning, but then again, see people who look like you, who are from where you're from, makes an entire difference.
And I don't want to like take over this, but there became this expectation that you would be there.
Absolutely. And the days I wasn't, it was a problem. It really was. Mr. Where were you? I didn't see you this morning. You missed my bus. But it became an expectation, which was good. Right. The kids came to school, and it was fun for me too, because I'd wake up in the morning, like, I got to get there because the kids are expecting me. So, you know, it's motive. Sometimes we're drained. We don't want to get up in the morning, but you find a ways to get there. So yeah, absolutely.
Yes, indeed. We'll continue this in the Q&A. Brother Eli, I want to give you some time there.
No, I appreciate it. I was just going to add, I do believe that it impacts, you know, young people of color, young Black boys, brown, minority. It impacts negatively until they're taught otherwise and taught differently, right? Because again, the narrative is very similar here. Many of us didn't have, that educator. Some of us didn't have that educator or person telling us the importance of, why you need to go on and do this, why you need to do that. I remember in 6th grade, Mrs. Valerie Vismail was my 6th grade teacher. And I didn't recognize it until later on when I finally grew up, so to say. But she told me when I was in 6th grade, she pulled me to the side. She said, "Elijah, why are you doing all of that? Stop following the crowd. You're different." And again, back then, I didn't know what she was talking about because they look just like me. Like, we're just clowning around, we're joking. And so that was 6th grade, and again, didn't hit home until later. And so when we look at a lot of the data, the statistics on the stereotypes, the biases of how students of color perform based on free reduced lunch and all of that, it impacts negatively until, again, I believe they're taught differently. Like, and it was said before, no, you don't have, okay, this might be a situation or a circumstance, but that doesn't have to be your narrative. It may have been something that you grew up in, but you can change that narrative. You can change that, and being taught, the proper perspective, and I think Mr. Chief said it, if we all walked in a room together, it'll be a lot of looks. It'll be questions that are asked. And so I could have a suit on, and I'm sure other brothers can attest. I've had suits on, head to toe, with a portfolio, with a pad. People looking around and grabbing purses and things of that nature. And I'm like, look, I don't want nothing from you. I'm minding my business. My mind is somewhere totally different. But it's that perspective of, and that thought, well, here's a Black male, a Black man. What is he going to do? What is he going to say? What is going to happen? And so, again, one of the things that I look to do is dispel that. Just again, like many of us here, just dispel that. Look, stand in your skin, stand in it. There's one thing that you can't choose. You can't choose your parents, right? But you can own who you are. You can own what you do from this point on, right? Or wherever you are, you can own that. So again, I believe that those biases, they're there. They've been there. I think they're going to continue to be here for however long. That's not going to change. We can't control people. We can't control, no matter how many policies are passed, people are going to be people. They're going to perceive what they want to perceive about you. But you can control, and this is the one thing that I tell these young people, you can control what you do, your effort, what you put in. Don't worry about them. They're going to think what they want to think, but you can control the narrative and the effort that you put in.
Word up. Thanks, brother, for that. Wow. So I was going to lead into our follow-up to this. And I think, Eli, you started to talk about, how you confront that or ways that you challenge the idea of these stereotypes. If there are others who want to add to this before we transition to our next question, please take a few minutes to do so.
I'll jump in there. One of the things that I try to do with my organization, I'll give a staff development workshop or in a keynote speech or something along those lines. The vast majority of educators in the K-12 system are white women, some over 80%. At the end of the day, we have, I firmly believe that they want to genuinely connect with and want what is best for the students in their class, regardless of color. I wholeheartedly believe that. What I don't think is there, though, are the tools that are necessary. So what happens sometimes is when you have these conversations about implicit bias, or those neighboring words, it raises red flags for people sometimes. And so what they'll immediately do at a subconscious level is put up that brick wall because that implies racist. Oh, I'm not a racist, so he's not talking to me. And so what I've had to do now is shift that narrative. So instead of coming at it from a perspective of implicit bias, I say, let's examine our paradigms. Let's examine the lens through which we are looking at the world and subsequently our students. And what I found is that allows me to now have a bridge to engage in these conversations and kind of slowly turn the temperature up, so that now we can take that mirror and just a little bit, turn it on yourself, and let's see what you're really looking at.
I love it. Can I add to that?
Go for it.
Mr. Woodley, Dr. Woodley, excuse me, was spot on. You know, yeah, definitely. You know, you want to create that opportunity to have dialogue, and you want the space to feel safe, you know, so that people that don't look like you are willing to share and really open that door and say, look, there's some things I need to evaluate and check. You know, especially as a leader, you know, as an organizer, someone who has to bring people together, people that aren't like me, that don't come from where I come from. You know, I'm able to connect with certain students because certain students look just like me. You know, we can share the same stories. To me, I always wanted to be the example. You know, the way I carry myself, the way I present myself, I wanted to be an example for my students, you know, and that came from being an older brother in my household. I have 4 younger siblings. So I knew that eyes were always on me. I was always being watched, even by my peer group, my colleagues. I'm always being watched. I'm on stage. So the gift that I have is I've been a performer for over 30 years of my life. So, you know, knowing what it takes and having that etiquette to be on stage and all eyes are on you, you have to be very mindful of how you move, how you talk, because again, people perceive that. So again, for me in education, it was showing students this is a way, not the only way, but I did it my way. And it was effective and it was polished and it was tight, it was organized, so that, you know, we want the best representation of ourselves. For my students, it was always, we're going to be early. We're not going to ever be the band that shows up late. You know, we're going to be early. We're going to be ready, prepared, and we're going to play at a level that no one anticipated. See, when you come into a forum and someone has invited you to participate in something and you have an all-Black group and your students are dressed and they play with such excellent talent, it almost kind of throws people back like, well, what's going on over here? But it was because they had already perceived that these folks weren't going to be able to live up to the expectation. But again, when you're well prepared and well trained and you come ready to work, you get some great results. So that's my 2 cents.
I think as the brother Stephen just mentioned, challenging that, I think for me is just being the best example that I can, right? Knowing what I wasn't taught, knowing the example that wasn't set for me. Let's start on a personal level with in the home, right? My pops was around up until I was about 11 or so, still fairly young. But he taught me one valuable thing that I can remember distinctly: what not to do, how not to put my hands on a woman. And people look at me like, that's the only thing that your pops taught you? Absolutely. And when I tell you, like, our relationship is great now. Over the last 5, 6, 7 years, you know, we've been able to mend that because growing up, there's a lot of hatred, a lot of anger, frustration. If the man's name ever came up, it's like, yo, don't talk to me about home, ever. And then I got to a point in my life where, you know what? Let me find out who he is. Let me know who he is, right? So knowing what not to do, and then, you know, we've repaired, you know, all of that. Come to find out, we're very, very similar. You know what I mean? Which is crazy. But again, he taught me what not to do. So I think for me, challenging the stereotypes is number one: be the best example that you can be. Show up and show out, not from an arrogant standpoint, but like, as I mentioned before, be proud of who you are unapologetically. Don't be ashamed of your success. Don't be ashamed of the things that you've been fortunate to do and accomplish. You know what I mean? And in addition, not just being the example on different levels professionally, right? I never thought in a million years that I would teach a course, ever. I was that dude like, yo, I ain't never teaching nobody nothing. Like, cause I know the type of student that I was. I would ask a ton of questions and certain things didn't click, right? And I joke with my wife, she's an educator, but I said, I'll never teach. Like, I'm glad I married an educator because you're gonna teach these kids, right? But, you know, and I found myself, I was an adjunct instructor a few years ago at a community college. And it brought on a whole different perspective for me about education. So working with, you know, youth and young adults and, you know, student development and all of that, it's one thing, but from a teaching perspective, I was like, whoa, okay, I'm really starting to connect the dots now and seeing a lot of the challenges firsthand that students face academically, right? And I think it was mentioned before, just creating that environment. And when I walked in, it was like, we got a Black instructor. You know, they saw the suit and tie and all of that, but you know, towards the end of the course, it was like, Mr. Oliver, like, we appreciate you. Like, you know what I mean? Just to hear the feedback on what they, you know, got from the course, but also the safe space that I provided, you know, for them. And so I think more than anything, it's really being that example and challenging. You don't have to do much talking, but just show up, be the example of who you are, who you can be, and just, you know, learn to pour into and develop whoever it is that we're supposed to pour into, whoever we're attached to. So just really being the example.
Word up. Thank you for that. Thank you. All right. Not sure if there's any other follow-up, so we'll transition to our next one. Hopefully this doesn't get too deep, but would like to, you know, share the impact. So how has education positively or negatively impacted your relationships? And that being with your family, your partner and children, or within your community? And I see somebody about to hop through the screen here.
No, if I may, I'll take the first leg of this one. I'm gonna tackle the children part of it. So I got every job I've ever had has been dealing with children for my entire life. I got my job as a dean fresh out of college. So I've been there, like I said, 18 years. And for me, just dealing from a behavioral component on a daily basis, it has taught me unparalleled lessons in how to navigate through tense situations with my kids. I mean, I've learned it's crazy because I'm talking louder to you all than I ever do at my job. I never raise my voice. These kids, I would assume a lot of them are getting yelled at often. They just got kicked out of class or yelled at home, or when I call the parent, they're going to get yelled at. So when they come to me and they're all irate and screaming, and I let them take their moments and listen, can we talk now? And it's become so effective in interacting with my children because I take certain situations, the ones we got beat for, I'm teaching a lesson. And the little ones that we didn't get beat for, I'm making a big scene out of. You know, and I was telling my aunt the other day, who's conveniently younger than me, Papa was a Rolling Stone, a lot of questions on that. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, we were having a conversation. It was just yesterday. And I was telling her how my daughter, she was in kindergarten and she had taken an eraser from the book fair. And I don't know if she knew what stealing was, but in that moment, it was for me to teach and not really bark. You know, teacher came like, your daughter, I'm like, what? Like, you want to tell me my daughter's the good girl in class, that we're not doing that. And she told me that. And I was, of course, disappointed, but I didn't react how my mom would have reacted. Probably went home and got whooped. No, I mean, I learned from those lessons, but I wanted to be different from my kids. Nevertheless, so my daughter tells a little white lie, maybe months later, just something real, the most minuscule thing, you know, whatever. But I made it such a big deal. And I think a lot of it was it was about teaching that lesson and knowing how to respond to certain situations. And again, a lot of that practice has come from the education, being in the educational system and learning how to navigate through those behaviors. So just in terms of my kids, I think it's me being in education has helped me tremendously. And as a parent, it's one of the biggest compliments you can get as being a good parent. I was disciplining my son the other day and I hear the fellas in the background like, yo, watching Chief talk to his kids like textbooks parenting. And I heard them, they didn't say it to me, say each other, but it felt good. But I attribute that honestly to a lot of stuff I learned at school. So, I mean, one of the fellas can tackle on the other component. I'm single, so I'm not married. I can't use that aspect of relationship what education has done for me. So maybe one of you brothers can take that end of it all.
Word up. Thanks.
I can jump in. I wanted to add to what Chief had stated earlier. You know, showing people that you're a real person is hard. Outside of school, you know, doing your daily chores, you bump into people casually at the local supermarket, different things like that. They don't even look at you like a real person. So that to me with education, that's always been a challenge. I've had students that completely freak out, like, oh my goodness, this is my teacher. And I've had kids that run and hide, like, oh my God, he's gonna, you know, tell my mom something bad about me. When 9 times out of 10, I always say something, of course, positive, and just let them know, hey, I love having so-and-so in my class. I think the biggest thing, you know, for me with education, it is taught me balance. As a high school band director, because I taught at all levels, kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade, and even did a summer of arts appreciation at the College of William and Mary. But you know, music had turned into kind of my hustle. Anything in regards to music, if I could make money in the summer, private instruction, working with this group, that group, if it's paying, I'm doing it. The only problem with that is you start pouring more into the folks outside of your home than the people in your home. And that can create some challenges. If you are a spouse, you have young children, you know, I'm talking diaper age kind of stuff. You know, it does create some challenges. Early in my career, you know, as a high school band director, I mean, my daughter literally took her first steps in my band room. You know, she was that age. You know, I remember, you know, my ex-wife pushing pushing the stroller in the parades. You know, it was one of those things that I don't miss it, that dynamic, but I appreciate it more now because I had to learn how to say no to some things. I had to learn that, you know, it's okay to not have rehearsal today. It's okay to, you know, let students just be students sometimes, you know, because they need a chance to just be kids and enjoy their friends and not always have something else to do or something else planned. But, you know, to say it and kind of shape it and put it all together, through education, I've just learned how to balance and humble myself and to know that, you know, time is valuable and time with your family, your own personal family is valuable, and self-care is important. You know, taking time to have a good meal and enjoy, you know, your hobbies and your interests compared to, again, pouring into so many others. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. I know Miguel was ready.
Yeah. It's important to me, this part, because when I was taking my educational journey, and I still am, because I'm still learning to this day, my wife decided to take classes with me. We both decided together that we're going to take classes at STCC. So it was a journey that we both took together that was inspiring. She would tell me, Miguel, don't give up. You could do it my first semester. And then again, I would tell her with her statistics class, Betsy, you can do this. So it was something where we both fed off each other. We've been together for about 25 years. So it was something that we both took this educational journey together, and it transitioned over to our kids. We learned a lot in education as going to STCC and learning what classes that sociology and psychology, and you learn a lot about yourself and who you are and why you do the things you do. And it's helped shape the person I am, and it's helped shape my kids. They now get they now get more from me because I am in education, you know, and I can give them what they need. So yeah, it's positively affected me and my wife and my kids. So yeah, it's a journey.
Word up. Let's see. Oh, go for it.
Yeah. So it's definitely been a positive impact. There have been aspects based on perspective and perception that were negative. only from the standpoint of, you know, as you grow, as you develop, as you mature, you outgrow certain circles, you outgrow certain people. Not saying that, you know, you're better than anybody, but, you know, when you move to different levels in life, you know, you outgrow certain people, and certain people look at it like, oh, you think you're better than somebody. That's totally not the case, right? But for the most part, it has been positive. I was fortunate. I actually married into education, which was interesting. My father-in-law was actually, he was a bureau chief of Department of Education for the state of Connecticut, you know, many years ago. He was an assistant commissioner, started the first teacher corps program for teachers at the University of Hartford. My mother-in-law taught for over 30 years on all levels. My wife, the special education teacher, 21 years, and my sister-in-law, you know what I mean? So I married into it. And to be honest, when we first met, I was like, okay, y'all talking about stuff that, okay, I gotta level up. I gotta get my game up, right? You know, but it was healthy. It was healthy competition. It wasn't, you know, as Miguel mentioned, it wasn't like, oh, you know, you better than me. It wasn't none of that. But again, when you get into certain circles and certain realms, you're kind of forced, you know, to level up and do better and become better, right? And so, you know, all of that has assisted me. And now my father-in-law, we have conversations now. You know, I work in higher education. And so now we have different dialogue and talk back and forth about what used to go on, you know, back then versus how things are now. And all bringing it all together, you know, I'm now able to pour into my children, right? I have a, you know, 15-month-old son, and I call her my three-nager. She's a 3-year-old with teenager tendencies, right? But, you know, I'm able, and she's one of those, she loves school, and it's quite interesting to see, like, she gets excited about school. So when she brings certain things home and working with her writing, and I'm literally watching, there's a saying, it's hard to discipline the you in your child, right? So when I see her, you know, getting frustrated and flustered about, you know, different concepts, and even writing her name, and Daddy, it doesn't work. And, you know, because of who I am and how I've grown and the things that I've learned, I'm able now to pour into her and teach her, because it starts at home. You know, we can't expect the schools and these institutions to teach our children everything, right? So now I'm able to, you know, pour into, you know, my kids and teach them, not only give them what I wasn't given, but teach them what I wasn't taught.
Word. Doc, you're up. Yes, sir.
It's interesting. I can connect and relate to pretty much everything that has been said so far. And I find it interesting because with my kids, I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. And I struggle sometimes. I know balance was mentioned. I struggle with that because on one hand, I know that being an educator first helped me to be a better parent. I understood a lot of the tendencies of, especially teaching those younger grades, of smaller children and things of that nature, the energy when it's on 1,000 and yours is 0, my God. But at the same time, it's like, I know I want so much more for my kids. I know what's out there if they're not prepared. And so I have extremely high expectations for my kids. And here's where I struggle with the balance, because sometimes I think my expectations are too high and I push too much, but it's with good intention. And my wife has to remind, he's 5. He's 5. And she just has to bring me down sometimes, which helps to navigate that, because here I am, I'm trying to push him. I know he can do it. Let him, you know, and just on a father, you know, my son and things of that nature. But then at the same time, it's just like, you know, let him be a kid. He has his energy. Let him do what he needs to do. He does very well in school, and that's all that I can ask. So it's this dichotomy that I struggle with on a day-to-day basis. But I think being an educator and a researcher. It's helped me at least to be self-aware enough to understand that. And when those things come up, I can at least I can recognize, all right, this is that time where, hold on, is this the best decision? Is this something that he needs to do right now, or can that just wait until another time? And so just having that balance with myself, but then also my wife to kind of keep me balanced and on that straight and narrow path has definitely been clutch.
Yes, indeed. Excellent. And I'm going to jump in on this round of stories, you know, or sharing that the impact that has happened in the relationship. So I'll say one of those gifts that come from being an educator and connected to students is, you know, Steve, you mentioned it earlier, it's like they don't think you do normal things, but they also become like paparazzi when they see you out doing normal things, you know. Oh, Mr. Lightfoot, oh, Mr. Lightfoot, you getting some new sneakers. And I'm like, chill. Like, I have to do the same things you do to live. So that's one of those positives, I think, that can often go overlooked, you know, or that appreciation. You know, it's like, wow, kids actually like you, or they look up to you, or they admire you, and they'll never say it, you know, to your face, probably as often as they would like to, you know, due to peer pressure. So that's one of those things. What also comes with that, I would say, is the negative, is that you could be out trying to have a moment, you know, with yourself, with your family, and, you know, a parent will roll up and we're like, oh, Mr. Lightfoot, yeah, I need to talk to you about, you know, so-and-so. I'm like, I'm sorry, this is not the time, you know, office hours, or you can send an email. This is not the time and space for that. I'm trying to enjoy my popcorn at the movie. Like, this is not the space for us to have parent-teacher conference. You know, so that's one of those things that come with that. And I would, you know, just echo that balance of having also young children. And right now in remote learning, where I sit, I'm learning preschool all over again. And I'm decades removed from, you know, cutting out shapes and actually learning that there's a technique to learning how to cut, right? You wouldn't birth learning to hold scissors, and, you know, and so learning that process and learning like what our educators are experiencing, I think is helping my household for us to really understand, you know, education from the outside in, as opposed to like being in the classroom, actually being, you know, someone who's, you know, practicing. All right, so thank you all. If there was anyone else wanted to share, I just wanted to put my 2 cents in on that one, because I was with you all on that one. Like, oof, it's not easy, you know, and it's not all bad. There's actually a lot of good that comes out of that. All right, so we'll move on, and this is our last question, and then we'll get into some Q&A. And I see there are a few questions popping up now that will be handled by another facilitator. So our last question here: how have you worked to support boys and men of color to overcome barriers within education? That's part one. Part two of that is, what lessons have you learned, and what advice do you have for institutions seeking to improve educational equity? So we can take that in two parts if you all like, so we can tackle question one and then follow up with question two. So first one, what have you done to support boys and men of color to overcome barriers within education? If there's anything in addition to what you've shared earlier.
I have been lucky enough to be part of the MIO program. And what we try to do is reach those barriers with men of color and try to help them where they stand at. That's one thing. Also, I work at the Springfield Adult Learning Center, so I'm able to meet young men as they come in to our program, and just being a mentor, or just being a shoulder or someone to talk to about different things, just all types of things. Just being there, being present is a way that I'm able to help in a small way. You know, yeah, there's so many ways to do so, but that's the way that I try to reach out to men.
So in my particular case, I've been a coach for basketball and football for several years now, and I can't remember who mentioned. I want to say it might have been between Miguel or Steve, and they talked about just presentation, and presentation is half the battle in terms of most of what you do. So we have like tying sessions where, you know, we get the kids together and we don't let we go to away games. We want our kids to look good, so we teach them all to tie ties. And you have to come with a shirt and tie on, and you have to tie your tie yourself. And we really work on that, and it's every day. And part of your like playing time is considered upon how well your tie is tied and how well you look before the game. And we make it a requirement so these kids know presentations have to represent yourself well. There have been several mentor programs. I use a lot of my poetry, like you gentlemen are into music. I use a lot of my poetry to kind of connect and tap into the kids. And you believe it or not, I've had some of the toughest and roughest dudes come in my office and dropping off poems. And it's the coolest thing ever. You know, the kid who just cussed me out the day before come back, Miss, I wrote you this poem. You know what I'm saying? So that's also really, really cool. My district is actually putting together an initiative now where they are funding a program to invite men and people of color into teaching, and it's an 18-month program where a lot of them will have that kind of paid for, so people of color can come in now and impart on change in a culture of not having many minorities in the system. So that's been something that I'm pleased to see happening. There was one more thing I wanted to talk about that I can't remember, but let you guys go and I'll come back to it.
You know, I have kind of informally become the go-to when it comes to male mentorship, especially in the middle school environment. I look at it as a blessing, quite frankly. You know, I work with students at an age where, quite frankly, they need to see, you know, somebody that's like them, especially young men, somebody that's like them, whether, you know, black, brown, or whatever ethnicity. They just need to have that male experience. You know, not a lot of fathers in the home, not a lot of positive male influences. So for me, I am the go-to, but I've always led with getting involved in what students are involved in, getting to know them. You know, I've stayed after because I used to be the after school activities director. I would stay after and go to archery and learn how to shoot and get the kids to show me, how do you shoot, you know, with this bow and arrow and kind of get a sense. Because I have a musical background, it's nothing for me to do an observation in the band room. And then that turns into, well, I'm on the podium. Now I'm teaching a lesson. I have actually taught band at the school that I work at. And I mean, the kids eat it up. You know, I brought my trombone to school and sat down next to them in their section and played along. And they get a kick out of that because they're like, what? I said, I wasn't always an administrator. I wasn't always assistant principal. And it blows their mind. You know, and I said, you know, this is where I started. I started just like you as a little 10-year-old, learning my first notes in band, and, you know, you build on that and just encouraging them to keep working. As activities director, you know, I would always go to the track meets and the basketball games, and I'm rooting them on, and I'm talking to them during class. So how are we going to do at the meet next week? How many points you going to put up? You know, just getting connected with them in any way that I can, just to show, one, that I care, two, that I'm interested in what they're interested in, and just to encourage them to continue doing this, because the ultimate goal is to do this at the next level and beyond, and potentially change some of these students' circumstances.
There we go. I'm gonna piggyback on what Miguel said earlier, because a lot of our students, they want to be what they see, and too often what they see, for one reason or another, which is fine, is athletes and musicians, rappers, not musicians, but just rappers. And part of the reason that a good portion of the reason that I created this kind of brand, if you will, is so that I can showcase that around in public, wherever I go, not only am I an educator, but I'm proud to be an educator. And that you can aspire to be that. You can see that you don't have to be, which is nothing wrong with, buttoned up. I'm casual most of the time, but I also know how to flip that and put on my shirt and tie when it's appropriate. But I can be both of those and be appropriate in both things. I wear this kind of as a bat signal, just as something that they can aspire to be, and help other educators with that same thought process in mind. So I think it's a lot of times, if we put ourselves in positions of exposure, that's the word that I was looking for, just exposure, because too often they can't aspire to be something they don't see. And when they see it, it's like, wow, okay. Yeah. Just like Mr. Arrington was saying, he gets in there, he lets those kids see him. He lets them experience him. Chief was talking about how he connects with those kids. They are the first person that they see each and every day, regardless of what happens after that. They've at least seen someone, and that's important.
Absolutely. I wanted to piggyback kind of what everybody was saying, but Dr. Woolley just mentioned wearing it with the purpose. And I strategically, as a part of helping establish rapport and connection, the first week of school, I don't wear a shirt and tie. I wear my sneakers, and just like I'm a regular casual person. So they don't see that often. You know, they see that shirt and tie, and it's almost like a sign of intimidation in some factors. So I'm very, very casual the first week of school in my sneakers and just kind of just cooling out. And then I flip my shirt and tie and show them the balance of it all, and how you have to be comfortable in everything. But it really does help me create these connections with my kids. Secondly, what I wanted to mention earlier was, as a part of the whole tie tying thing, we teach them in education. What I've learned in high school, at least, is a lot of these kids present confident, but don't actually have that. And it's a mask. And we've all seen the stereotypical, you know, hey, Johnny, can you read page 7? And he gets an attitude because Johnny can't really read, and people don't pick up on that. So we really focus on being confident. I mean, as simple as a handshake is something that represents confidence. So we teach kids how to shake a hand properly. I can't tell you how many times I got the slimy, you guys know, you laugh because you know what it is. You get that real slimy, the squeeze right here, you know what I'm saying? So I've really focused on, like, you'd be so surprised at how many kids feel confident in just how they shake a hand. Like, we go every day before practice, I'll just go by and I'll shake everybody's hand, and that little squeeze that represents masculinity, it makes them feel so empowered, and they look you in your eyes and they're standing firm. And that's the beginning of this whole confident phase. So I think that's a good way for me, at least, to give back to these kids and help them be more confident, because I know for myself, I didn't have it. I pretended to have it, but I definitely didn't have it until much, much later. So I think it's a big part of giving back, is trying to help these kids by instilling some confidence within them, for sure.
Absolutely. If I could just share this really quick. One of the things that I do, and again, a lot of it, has been mentioned already. And Chief, that's hilarious that with the whole handshake thing, because look, when I get them slimy handshakes, I'm like, I'm sorry, let's try this again. What's going on, young man? How you doing? But no, I think it's important. A lot of what has already been mentioned, the instilling the confidence, but also, again, going back to my point about, being an example, not just from what I was, like I said, wasn't taught, or what I was taught, but as it's already been mentioned, there's a lot of young people, Black boys, Black and brown, they don't know what it is to see a successful man, or to see a successful Black male, or whatever it is. And as I think Dr. Sean had mentioned it, about what they see, what they grow up around. I'm one that wanted to be a rapper. I still got a little bars, just a little bit. I don't operate it anymore, but I wanted to be a rapper. I had a rap group growing up. I had a stage name, all of that stuff. But when I got to college, I was like, wait a minute, how am I trying to do this? And back then I didn't know that you could do both and still be nice, right? But again, pouring into them, leading them to the place where they want to be. So I don't believe in, giving all of the answers all the time, right? It's a lot for me is leading them. So tapping into leading them to the answers that they already have, right? It's a lot of what I do in my coaching, my youth male mentoring program, Isaiah's Way, that I started in honor of my cousin, my first cousin, who tragically lost his life based off of a decision that he made, right? So I was the first in my family to go to college. He would have been the second. But he made a decision, right? He was coming home one weekend from, he got accepted to this summer, bridge program, and him and his girlfriend were coming home that weekend to grab more of their things. She went up, above the tracks on the platform. He decided to jump the tracks. And if you know anything about, trains and train stations, platforms, there's nothing underneath to pull you. It's all upper body, right? To pull yourself up if that's what you choose to do. He didn't make it. He made a decision, and in a split second lost his life because of a decision. So a lot of what, I do with the programs, with my company and coaching and whatnot, is really letting them know the importance of the decisions that you make really affect someone somewhere, including yourself, at some point, right? It may not be immediate, but at some point, the decision that you make or don't make, for that matter, because not making a decision or choosing not to do something is also making a decision. And so that's a lot of what, I do with my company and coaching and mentoring and things of that nature.
Word up, brothers. Thank you all so much. That was powerful. And I think that hit at both of those questions, unless someone had something else to add about improving educational equity. I think you all shared, at least what I was hearing. Maybe there's more about what you're doing what you're personally doing, and then lending some of that, advice that can help others, in the spaces that they're working, that they're performing or educating or interfacing with students. So unless there's more, looks like Chief, yeah?
I wanted to make one more point, and just in terms of improving the educational equity, I would like to implore all educational systems to utilize their resources. Often, shout out to you guys for inviting us all in, but oftentimes we don't notice what we have within. And I'll give you a prime example. Several years ago, my school invited an African-American poet to come into the building. I felt jaded. Poet was awesome, but I'm like, I do exactly what this person does on, just the same level, if not bigger, but you haven't asked me to do so. And just utilize the resources you have on campus in the building to get some of these kids to connect and have these conversations, because the kids are ultimately why we're there. And if we can get them to speak to someone they're comfortable with, rather than having to spend thousands of dollars to seek outside sources, you have these people right at your fingertips and at your disposal, and you're not using them. So in some cases like that, you have to make sure that you check from within first, and then, branch out. And oftentimes it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I can say that 5 more times. Go for it. Just keep saying it.
Well, again, it's a double-edged sword, because you guys asked us to come on, and we're appreciative of being here. So, you know what I'm saying? But it's something a lot of education systems don't do.
Yeah, and I want to round us up, but I know others have something to share on that point.
No, I was just going to
echo.
Yeah, echo the same thing. Invite everyone to the table. People that are within your building that you're developing constantly, they have gifts and abilities and tools and resources, like Chief said. Invite them to the table. I've been a part of curriculum development and starting programs and organizations because I was invited to the table. I have some input. I'm on the ground level working with kids each day. This is what gets them motivated. This is what gets them going. You want them to connect with you? Let's have some real conversation. And that's all I have.
All right. Doc, you're lean forward. You want to say something, or are you just in agreement? All right. Well, I was just going to share, like, this space that's been created today. I think we need to see more of it. And I know, this could be isolated to, something that Springfield Technical Community College is doing. But I think this should be like, headline news that, brothers are coming together to provide their input and perspective on how we can shift, these storylines or shift this data or, these practices that are happening inside the schoolhouse, right? So, as you all were saying earlier, the 6 of us show up to a school ready to go to work, there's going to be a different question about how each of us is going to show up, and it should be like, we've been waiting on you, or why didn't we have you all here sooner? As opposed to the other questions are like, what's your agenda? What are you selling? Like, how long are you going to be around before you move on to the next thing? So I think this forum today was very important. And I hope, if there's other information that, you all can share or want to leave behind, please do that before we transition off. But I want to give my first thanks to you all for being here. I'll come around again to say thank you because I'm just honored, as usual or as always, to be in the presence of good brothers doing some great work. And I'm inspired today, just to have had this conversation and to know that, the fight, the journey continues for our young people. And there are at least 5 other people I know I can give information out about to, the young people, right? So we've created another page in the Black History story for the young people who are looking up to us, all right? We'll make sure that gets added somewhere to some book. But we're going to transition to a Q&A. I see there are a couple of questions, and Cindy's going to come on to ask those questions. And I'll be back to you all shortly.
So the first question we had come in is, what happens to someone? What happens to a student who gets a lower grade in college, such as a D or an F?
Can I answer that, Cindy?
Yes, absolutely.
Nothing will happen. Listen, I wasn't the perfect student. My son is not the perfect student, and I'm going to use him as an example. And when I spoke to him about it, I was speaking about myself. We all are not gifted with the best of memory or the best of this or the best of that. But what I can say is reach out to your peers, reach out to your professors, anything that you can get as far as extra help, anything that you can get from your peers, especially, will help you in the long run. And like I told my son, you as a father, you have these feelings about your kids and about their grades and whatnot. And when you have that conversation with them, you don't want to be looking down on them and talking down on them. So you just have to put yourself in that experience. I was once one of those students who didn't get good grades, and it's okay. It's okay. Just keep working on it. Don't give up, and you'll make it. Trust me, you will.
I want to add to that. Definitely the peer influence definitely is something I would advocate for. Find and seek out people that are better than you, that know the material, whether it's an upperclassman or somebody, again, in your peer group. Dr. Woodley was right along with me. Our freshman year of college was an away season when we started in the marching band together, and finding that balance of getting my schoolwork done, but yet being on the road almost every weekend, traveling to this state, this city, it became a challenge. And believe it or not, I don't share this very often, but I was on academic probation at the end of my first semester of my freshman year. And I had to clean some things up. I had to change my study habits. I had to change, even my circle of people that I was connected to. I had to change some things because I was going to find myself out of college. And I was on a scholarship. School was paid for, done. But if I wasn't meeting the mark, it just opens the door to other challenges you will have. So I got around good people that were serious about their academics. I found a better way to utilize my time. And once you do that, create a plan of how you're going to map out your day, your week. The academics will come, but definitely connect with your professors, reach out. That's the beauty of college, having real conversations saying, hey, ma'am or sir, I'm struggling. I need help. They can, then provide you some office hours, connect you with some people that can get you some tutoring or help or support so that you don't feel alone in this adventure we call upper education. So that's my 2 cents. Keep trucking, stay motivated, stay connected, and definitely if you need support, reach out.
If I can just jump in really quick, and it's a very, very valid question. I think one of the things that I've realized is that there's a lot of students that they look at those grades, if they receive their first D, they might have been scholars in high school, but they get that first D or that first F in college. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. Like what is going, and then the mindset starts to shift into thinking like, well, this is who I am, and they accept it. And it's not. Right. Okay, it happened. The first thing that I want you to do is really identify and ask yourself, okay, did I give my all? Did I study how I was supposed to study? Did I, as Mr. Arrington said, did I reach out and ask for help? Like there's a huge difference between high school and college. And folks that work in higher education, we won't know that you're struggling unless you ask. And again, as it's been mentioned, ask for help. Hey, professor, I need to know, I'm lost. If they explain it and you still don't understand it, that's okay. Every institution has some level of academic support, tutoring, math lab, writing center, whatever the case is, everybody learns differently, right? The other thing that I want to encourage you to do, and I didn't learn this until I got to grad school, and it was a strategy where I created my own little mini vision board, right? And I actually, and I promise you, this is not like, I just had it, I have it here because I was literally on a call yesterday with another student and they had the same question, right? So I asked them like what they do to prepare and all of that stuff. And one of the things that I showed them was the syllabus or the syllabi that I got when I was in college, in grad school, excuse me. So what I used to do is write whatever grade that I envisioned, I used to write that and highlight it on every page of the syllabi. And again, I promise you this ain't no like setup. Like I literally was on a call yesterday. I literally write A's, like I don't know if you can see it, but highlighting, right? Every single page, every page, right? No matter what it is, no matter how big or small, right? Because every time that I looked at that syllabi on learning whenever assignments were due, I wasn't looking at the A, but I kept it in front of me. And I always saw it, okay, I got this due on this day. I got this due on that day. This is how I need to structure this paper. But in the back of my mind, I'm envisioning that A. So you always got to keep something in front of you, right? Okay, set that target. Like, okay, I want to make the dean's list, or I want to get a 4.0 this semester. Don't just throw it in the air and say, okay, well, I'll see how I can do this semester. No, from jump. And wherever you are now, okay, it happened. Assess, see what you've done, and now let's get to work. What do you want to accomplish from here to the end of the semester? What grade do you want to have? What GPA do you want to have by the time this spring semester is over? Envision it and then rock with it.
That's powerful. And to kind of add to that, one thing that I see all too often is that we don't recognize that grades are simply information. They're information, not identification. And what I mean by that is that they just literally give you information about what you've done, not who you are. So too often, we get, something goes wrong. As Stephen mentioned earlier, I've had my share of failed classes, if you will, but that I was at least able to identify that didn't represent, I'm not a failure. I may have failed that class. I am not a failure. Those are two different mentalities, and sometimes we conflate them. So we have to understand that, and also on top of that, we conflate it so much where I have to tell my students now, you may have had this experience that didn't result in a good test grade or a good grade on your assignment, but not one time is anybody going to ask you on an interview, I see here that sophomore year you didn't do too well on that test. It's never going to happen. So adjust, recalibrate, as it's already, there's some great jewels that have been dropped, but realize that you can separate your grades as information, not identification of who you are.
Can I also add one small thing?
Please, Megan.
Set small goals. I always was the one that used to set these goals that were way up here, and sometimes they feel like they're unattainable. Set small goals, little small goals here and there, and then once you achieve them, it'll make you get another goal and another goal, and it just enriches your life and it makes you feel better. Set small goals.
I was certainly going to say that, and listening to you all, set those small goals and write them down. As Elijah was saying, write them down so they're visible and tangible right in front of you. Write those goals down. And for Miguel, even with those goals that seem so far away, write that far away goal and then a bunch of small goals in between to help lead to that big goal. You know, if you want to get better grades, one of your goals should be maybe just spend a half hour a day locked in on a certain study, an hour a day. Just make sure those goals are written and set a plan, and that'll help propel you to the grades that you want to get.
But you know what's powerful about that, though? I'm gonna jump in on this and I'm gonna be quiet, because that small goal setting is ridiculously powerful from a scientific perspective, because what you're doing is you're releasing dopamine. I mean, it might be serotonin as well, but like, for example, I know that if I've done something that wasn't on my to-do list, I'll write it down and then check it off even after I've done it, just to get that quick fix. Like, there's a science behind this. So setting those small goals and literally putting pen paper and notating that you have achieved that, it psychologically benefits you to help propel you and keep moving you forward. Like, there's a reason for that. That is awesome advice.
So powerful. What a powerful question, and just such powerful responses. Thank you all so much. We have another question here. Any advice to a white English teacher who wants to draw students in and out?
So I think initially, if the intent is to draw them in, start by listening, hearing what's important to them, hearing what their concerns are, and then allowing them to teach you before you can even have an opportunity to teach them. Allow them to teach you. And I'll give an example. I took 2 white male teachers to the projects a couple summers ago. We walked to like 3 different projects in the city. You know, this is from where I'm from, these parts. So we walked through the projects, we saw a couple of our students, and just they got a feel for the environment in which their students live. We took a 3-bus trip with all the staff, and the staff didn't get off, but we drove through town and just kind of introduced the city to the staff so they knew where their kids came from. I think it's important to obviously know, you got to do your research. You know, if you go to a job interview, you kind of research what the job has, so you can give them some stuff so they know about what's going on. So the more you know about your clientele, the better you can serve them. So I think it's important for one to allow them to teach you about them before you can teach them anything.
That's huge, Chief. I just want to add authenticity. You have to lead with authenticity and just showing, you're uniquely there to share various experiences. But most importantly, make sure that they're culturally relevant. What I've gotten out of literacy, people want to play it safe. Let's stick with the curriculum, with the norms. We're going to read the texts that have kind of been passed down through the ages, if you will. I'm telling you, they're still reading Beowulf, you know, at the high school level. You know, they're still reading some of these same novels and tangible pieces that, you know, were read 20, 30 years ago. Not to say that they're not important, but yet I think we need to be willing to take risk and be open to, you know, reading some text and being exposed to some information that maybe you're not as comfortable with or you're not as knowledgeable about, but planting some seeds so that your students can definitely be comfortable in the space, because maybe you're reading from authors that are like them, that come from them, similar experiences, backgrounds. Oh my goodness. When I was never big into reading until I picked up a Donald Goins book. I used to eat those things for breakfast. I mean, I would consume them because his writings were almost movie-like to me. And I mean, I would read all the books in the series. And again, this is a person that I wasn't a huge reader back in you know, grade school and middle school and high school. But once I found an author or someone who kind of spoke to me and had some vivid images of things that I could, you know, basically it was just made palatable for me. I could digest it. It was welcoming. It was inviting. And I'm telling you, it opened the door to more because, you know, I found something that worked for me.
All right, if there's no other responses for that, we can take our last question and then wrap up. I'm going to read the question out loud. In my career as an educator, I've only taught with a few Black and brown men. I've noticed that the school administration and even other teachers have a tendency to use the men of color as go-tos for behavioral management. I found this to be problematic. What are your experiences with that? Have colleagues tried to put you in this authoritarian role? Can you talk about why this is not a good thing for students?
I'll jump in there for that. Because of the fact that a lot of times it is much easier for us to connect with the students. And I want to say either Stephen or maybe Elijah mentioned it earlier about how a lot of times teachers will send the Black male students to us. I'm pretty sure that everyone in here can relate to that in some way, shape, or form. And it's because of one reason: connection. So what has to happen is we have to hold everybody else to a higher standard. We're putting too much on the Black male educators, and that's generalizing here. Sometimes it's not always the Black male educators, but a lot of times it is. You might have those other sprinkled in there, but we have to, instead of putting all the onus on us, bring everybody else up at same expectation of being able to connect with their students, and really peeling back the layers to instead of saying you go to this person to calm down or to get you recalibrated. Why isn't that your teacher can't connect with you or is not able to get things in line with where they need to be? Shift that attention to focus on what is going wrong instead of trying to put that Band-Aid on it.
You're spot on, Sean, and I want to add to it. As a grade level administrator, I deal with this, you know, again, in traditional school, I deal with this daily. You know, Arrington, I can't deal with this student. I can't work with this student. This student has to be removed from my class. This student doesn't want to, you know, participate or engage. Unfortunately, and I have to say this, in education, we are a mirror to what is, quite frankly, going on in society. Many of our Black and brown children are, of course, in the community, Black and brown people are over policed. You know, we are not handled and dealt with in a reasonable way. There's a lot of aggression and dismissive, you know, behaviors are quite frankly just a reflection of what's going on in society, and it happens in school. You know, it's easy to dismiss a student. Oh, he has special needs, or he's in this box, or he's in this category. He can't perform, he can't do, you know, or his behavior is not the norm, or as acceptable as maybe another peer group. So it's easy to pass them on and hand them off to someone, again, that is like them or may have similar experiences, but no one wants to take the time to learn more about that individual student, make the connections, and really invest the time in in shaping, you know, a relationship with that child.
Absolutely, I 100% wholeheartedly agree with both of you brothers. I don't always necessarily see that as a bad thing, though. If an individual needs help in establishing that rapport and connection with another student, seek out the best suited person for that. And if it happens to be, you know, a minority male, so be it. But take that opportunity to learn and perhaps use that minority male to help you fuse this connection with this individual. So therefore, in a second instance, you can now handle the situation on your own without having to go there. But the continual, you know, kick out to Mr. Arrington is an issue. But if you've taken advantage of that opportunity and watched how Mr. Arrington interacted with this kid and got him to calm down or do whatever it is you needed to be done, you can now try to implement those strategies to help yourself. So as much as it is a negative thing, if you've now taken the opportunities and learned from them, then it's not always considered a bad thing, I guess, from my perspective.
De-escalation, that's the name of the game. If it would happen in the world and it happened in the school setting, there would be so many issues that would be diffused and eliminated. You know, we have to get to a place where we want to make education inclusive, not find ways to build walls and barriers.
I just want to quickly piggyback off what Chief just mentioned. You know, again, just passing it off is not a bad thing. It's happened, you know, so many times before. That's fine. But the key word, and again, just to reiterate what Mr. Chief mentioned, definitely take that opportunity to learn. Passing it off is one thing, but if you don't take the time to understand, you know, what's really going on with this particular student, a lot of times, you know, in my experience, I'm sure many others can attest, you know, it's really a matter of, it's a social emotional challenge, right? Not being able to be vulnerable or not being able to express one's feelings and emotions, and, you know, all that's bottled up because, you know, many of us, you know, Black men, you know, growing up, we weren't taught the value of expressing your emotions. Like, it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel this way. It's okay to be angry, but this is how you deal with it. And so I think it is highly, highly important, because when you take that time to learn, it also helps you, especially in education. You're not just going to experience one thing one time, right? You might experience it one time. It may not come again, you know, down the line a year from now, but at least you'll be better informed on how to deal with that particular situation when it presents itself again.
Can I, if I may, you guys know I'm a poet and a writer, but are you all familiar with the Joshua Dickerson piece, "Cause I Ain't Got a Pencil"? It's a real short piece. I'm gonna share it with you real quick, but this is something I've shared with a lot of my staff, and it really helps to help them understand the dynamics of where our kids come from. And it says, I woke myself up because we ain't got no alarm clock. Dug in the dirty clothes basket because ain't nobody washed my uniform. Brushed my hair and teeth in the dark because the lights ain't on. Even got my baby sister ready because my mama wasn't home. Got us both to school on time to eat us a good breakfast. Then when I got to class, the teacher fussed because I ain't got a pencil. And it's just the reality some of our kids go through. So when they get to school, that frustration is already at level 10. So the slightest thing can take them off the route, but we don't know. And we haven't taken the time to understand it or to get to know, again, our clientele. And that's ultimately important in terms of establishing rapport and helping moderate behavior.
Being able to listen is so important. Just listening and understanding what, you know, the students are going through. It's so important, and it's powerful. And it can have a long-lasting effect on that student. I didn't have many people that would listen when I was growing up. So if we just take the time out and just to listen to these students sometimes, yeah, it helps out.
I'm not sure if there are any more questions, but I just wanted to say thank you all.
We can't hear you, James. You might need to adjust your volume a little bit.
Now, good? Yeah, we've been talking a while, so, you know, the conversation got good and the batteries on the AirPods died. So no, I just wanted to say thank you all, so much for taking this time out and, sharing some of your experience, your knowledge, and, hopefully that the audience that was here live and those who will probably check this out at a later date will greatly benefit from this. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you all. It's because of, young men like you. This is what I wanted to say earlier. All of you all talking about 18, 30, 25 years in the game. None of you all look over 25. So you're doing something right. But again, thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. And, we hope that this relationship that we started today continues on, for the benefit of the young people that'll come behind us. So those are my last words. Thank you all.
Thank y'all for having us. Sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you for being part of this panel. These guys are amazing.
Thank you. It was great to connect with all of you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. It's definitely been a good time, fellas. I appreciate you all.
Definitely. Thank you all so much. It's been a pleasure. I've learned a lot and great to be connected with you all. Thank you to Springfield Tech Community College for the opportunity.
Well, as we have our last couple of minutes of closing here, I want to share some important information, but first and foremost, also a huge thank you to our attendees, especially those of you who are still here. What a rich and deep dialogue, and thank you for staying present, for staying engaged, for sharing your love and your questions with our panelists. It has been such an inspiring and powerful dialogue that has connected so many dots on so many levels, and just thank you all, this whole community of virtual presence, for spending this time in this space with us today. And again, as my colleague Vanetta spoke to at the beginning of our session, we value your feedback. You'll be getting an email with a survey for all those who registered and attended this event. Please share your feedback with us. This is a new initiative. It is near and dear to our hearts, and we would love to hear from you how we can continue to build and strengthen this dialogue together. As Vanetta spoke to at the beginning, the survey this time also includes information on ways to get involved in both the new focus group that we're going to be starting with STIC students who are men of color, the Heart to Heart focus group, as well as ongoing efforts around preventing gender-based violence in our campus community. And so please take the time to fill out that survey. As I'm finishing up here, please continue to share love for our panelists in the chat as well. And I just want to plug that our next session is part 2 for those of you who paid attention to the series in the fall. And I will also plug the fall series videos are all posted on the website. We had a part 1 of a conversation entitled Black and Blue, Dialogue on Police Violence, and specifically police violence and how it impacts men of color. We're going to have a part 2 to that dialogue with some new speakers and some of the same speakers that we had last time. And that is going to be on March 11th at 2 p.m. So a link to register for that can be found on the STIC Heart of a Man webpage. I'm going to copy and paste it in just a second. So bear with me if you need the link. I'm about to put it in. And oops. And there it is. So folks can grab it and open it up if you need it. And beyond that, just a heartfelt thank you. It is an honor and a privilege as always, and I hope all of you have a fantastic afternoon.